Hillsdale 101.7 FM. I'm Scott Bertram. With me today, Senator Mike Shirkey. You can find him on Facebook at Senator Mike Shirkey. Just look it up. Or SenatorMikeShirkey.com. He serves the 16th State Senate District. That's Branch, Hillsdale, and Jackson counties. Senator, how are you doing?
Doing great, Scott. Hoping that we can avoid the rain today. We had a Chamber of Commerce golf outing canceled last Monday and then rescheduled for today, and now I'm kind of concerned about that. So we're hoping to dodge the raindrops today.
Doesn't look promising, though yesterday we had a little rain, and my son desperately wanted to go ride his bike, so I actually walked/jogged alongside him, holding the umbrella over him to keep him dry as he rode his bike. So
I hope somebody got some photos or videos of that.
I don't know. Sometimes my wife will take them from inside the house where she's dry as I do things like that. So I'll have to check with her and see if something got done. But you can do that on the golf course too. Just have someone standing next to you, big golf umbrella, get it done.
That's right.
Before we get to some issues, Senator, I wanted to make sure we talked about a few events that you have coming up on the 25th, Friday the 25th, one in Coldwater, one in Hillsdale. So 9 a.m. at the Blue Hat Gallery in Coldwater, and then 2 p.m. at Rough Draft here in Hillsdale, a chance for people to come out and chat and ask questions and anything else they might want to do with you.
Nope, those are... In fact, I'm heading to one today, right now, in Jackson County at Columbia Township Hall. That's from 9:30 to 11. And then those two that you just identified, one in Coldwater at the Blue Hat on Friday and at 2 o'clock at the Rough Draft in Hillsdale. These are just the regular routine coffee hours, no agenda, no schedule, just people coming in and want to talk about whatever's on their mind and their perspective of what we're doing right or wrong, and it's always some of my favorite conversations.
All right, Senator Mike Shirkey, perhaps we'll answer a few questions as we chat today. We have talked the last couple of weeks about the Medicaid work requirement bill, the Medicaid changes that are passed the Senate, being worked on in the House. And there's been some criticism, as we've talked about. One of them had to do with the exemption in the bill. Counties in Michigan with more than 8.5% unemployment would have been exempt from the work rule. If I read correctly, it looks like the exemption is scheduled to be dropped from the final bill. Is that what's happening at this time?
So, yes, but the purpose of, or the reason why the exemption is being dropped is what's critical here. Mm-hmm. It's not because the New York Wine and the Washington Compost and other publications like them have played the R card, because that really, frankly, never crossed our mind. It's not intended, and it's an absurd claim on its face. But my focus has been from day one to make sure that we're designing this workforce engagement requirement so that it's not a burdensome bureaucratic morass that costs more money than it should to actually administer. And when we an unemployment exemption for counties that had high unemployment, the purpose of that was just to say, listen, if the county has a very high unemployment, then it's a little bit of a ridiculous notion to expect people to we're expected to get some training and some education and be out searching for jobs, but it's really harder to find jobs when it's that high. And there's only 8 counties right now in the state that would qualify for that.
Right.
But the department made it clear to me, as upon further analysis, that would become a very complex and very expensive element of the bill to administer. And so we talked through it, and in exchange for having an exemption for high unemployment, we're designing it so that a person who qualifies for the workforce engagement requirement can have up to 3 months a year where they can be disengaged for purposes of health, purposes of job change, you name it. And that is what we're going to substitute the for. So it's far easier to administer. And I maintain, Scott, quite frankly, that when people finally engage and are working, they're going to want to continue to work.
Right.
So I'm not at all concerned about people gaming this. I call it a life happens exemption. So that's where we're headed for this, and I'm delighted to report that the governor has been very engaged in the last 2 weeks on this, and we will be announcing, I believe, within 10 days, the final bill that we'll send to him for signature.
All right. Senator Mike Shirkey, again, 16th Senate District, Branch Hillsdale, Jackson County, SenatorMikeShirkey.com. Scott Bertram with you, Radio Free Hillsdale, 101.7 FM. Spend the rest of the time talking about a somewhat complicated subject, I guess, or at least maneuvers. The proposals, the ideas to legalize marijuana for recreational use in Michigan. There is a ballot proposal, but there's also discussion that the legislature might act first on the matter. Tell us what's happening here.
Well, there's two questions that you have to answer first. First question everyone has to answer is, if this gets on a ballot, will it pass? If you believe it will pass, then we should evaluate the options provided by our Constitution. If we believe it will not pass, then we should just let it go to the ballot and get defeated.
Mm-hmm.
My opinion, based on all the polls I've seen, is that it will pass if it gets on the ballot. So now we do a review of our Constitution, and there are three options. Once an initiative has been approved by the Board of Canvassers, which this has,
mm-hmm.
meaning it got enough signatures and so forth, the legislature must then accept that within their chambers and act. And there are three options for acting. One is to do nothing. That is actually an action. Do nothing, and that then puts it onto the ballot in November.
Okay.
The second option is to design a competing ballot proposal, and so that there's two on the ballot, and whichever one receives the most votes would then be enacted. And then the third option is to actually enact the law as stipulated in the citizen initiative. But the nuanced differences here, Scott, are that option one and option two, letting it go on the ballot or offering a competing proposal, if either of those are approved, then for perpetuity, those can only be amended and regulated with three-quarter vote in both chambers,
Okay.
which is a very high hurdle. We experienced that, if you recall, when voters passed medical marijuana in 2008. It took us virtually 10 years
mm-hmm.
to be able to muster up enough votes to put some regulatory structure on medical marijuana. So I happen to believe that it's going to pass on the ballot. I hate the thought of voting for recreational marijuana, but I hate the thought more that we won't be able to regulate it in a way that provides safety for citizens, in particular young people. So there's a school of thought in the legislature, starting in the Senate, that we should enact and then immediately begin regulating it in as much discipline as we have with the medical marijuana. Maybe even move out the enactment date to give us time to learn from what we're doing with medical marijuana, but enact the bill. That allows us to make changes and do amendments and regulatory structure with a simple majority vote and not a three-quarters vote in each chamber.
So, Senator, if lawmakers choose option three that you discussed, which is, enact the law,
Yep.
would you have to pass the language that's the exact language that's on the proposal, but then as you explain it, you would have the opportunity, easier than either of the first two options, to amend and change that language down the line. Is that correct?
That's correct. The Constitution makes it abundantly clear that if we enact the bill, it has to be the exact language that's on the citizen initiative. And then within, we wouldn't do it in the same day, but within a few weeks, we would then probably amend to begin the regulatory process and make it look virtually identical to the regulatory structure that we are not currently applying to the medical marijuana industry.
I don't have the exact language in front of me. When would be the date of it that the law would take effect under the current language of the ballot proposal?
90 days after sine die, so basically
Okay.
3 months after the first of the year.
But again, as you describe, lawmakers could pass, if they choose option three, pass that language as is, then say we need more than 90 days to figure out exactly what's going to be the best way forward and the best way to regulate this for the citizens of Michigan, right?
Yeah, and in fact, my specific recommendation, Scott, is going to be delay enactment until there's a scientifically proven methodology to measure somebody's impairment, like on the road, for instance, like we do alcohol. And that's not available right now. There are a number of companies that are working on it, but right now it's not available. So I think that would be a very safe delay enactment, not to take the wishes of the public away, and those that put the initiative together, but just say from a safety standpoint, we're going to wait until we have a scientifically proven ability for roadside impairment measurements. And so that's an example of the kinds of things we can do with just a simple majority vote. I cannot overemphasize how frustrating and how dangerous it could be if we end up passing it as is on the ballot and then having to get 3/4 votes in each chamber to change it, because when God created us, He created us to give us this amazing ability to forget pain.
Yeah.
And man, it was painful from 2008 to 2015 before we enacted some decent regulation on medical marijuana.
And this will have to happen quickly until June 5th, the deadline to decide what to do with the proposal in the legislature, yes?
I forgot to mention that. You're correct. The Constitution also only provides the legislature 40 days to make the decision between those three options. And so that deadline was June 5th, as you identified.
So we're going to have some up-to-date news the next time we chat, because that'll be just one day before that deadline. So we timed that pretty well, I think.
I think it's perfect.
All right, Senator Mike Shirkey, coffee today, and then again Friday, the 25th, 9 a.m. in Coldwater at the Blue Hat Gallery. Friday the 25th, 2 p.m. at Rough Draft here in Hillsdale for coffee and discussions with Senator Mike Shirkey. Senator, thank you as always.
All right, Scott. Have a great day, sir.
That's State Senator Mike Shirkey from the 16th State Senate District Branch, Hillsdale and Jackson counties. For more of our conversations and other interviews, check out our SoundCloud page, soundcloud.com/Radio Free Hillsdale. And I'm Scott Bertram on Radio Free Hillsdale, 101.7 FM.